Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Mate Night Podcast, where we are reviewing the IMDb Top 250 in alphabetical order until someone invites us to the Cannes Film Festival.
It's going to happen one day.
We're finally into the A's, and our first film is A Beautiful Mind, starring Russell Crowe. You're hosted by myself, Jamie, and, as always, I'm joined by the one and only Fred.
Oh, you didn't have anything for me today?
I tried to come up with something mathematical and failed.
The practical, the applicable, and the asthmatical.
And the graphical.
And the graphical.
There you go.
It's Fred.
We've just improv'd it.
Yeah,
to be honest with
it
you,
was shit.
It takes about 20 minutes to come up with one of those. And that 20 minutes could be spent actually researching the episode.
We'll spitball it every time.
We'll spitball it every time. So, as usual, we'll start off by arguing over how good this film really is and settle on a defining Mate Night score, which, as we all know, is never wrong.
Never, ever been wrong, never will be wrong.
Then we've got a couple of segments lined up. I've got some trivia. I've done a John Nash, The True Story. And Fred's got a surprise segment.
A special surprise Freddy segment.
Okay, no hints.
No.
Teaser for the audience.
No.
Okay.
I'm not giving you anything.
Okay. So strap in, strap on, and let's talk some movies.
I feel like we haven't strapped on in a while.
We haven't. No, I was quite excited. A Beautiful Mind. Is it any good? Over the next 20 minutes, we're going to score this film in 9 categories and take the average to determine if it's any good. This will be a spoiler conversation. First two up, gut reaction. A completely subjective, how much did we enjoy this film? Out of 10 to one decimal place, 3, 2, 1, 7.8.
Ooh, 7.4.
Oh, okay.
Oh, hello.
I really thought that you were going to hate this film from the way you were talking about it earlier.
Why?
You were just like, I said people who are going to watch this are going to really love A Beautiful Mind.
Unless they like A Beautiful Mind, yeah.
Unless they really like it, so just bear that in mind. And you were like, fuck those guys.
No, I just said that to say that. I think it's a good film. I do like it.
I liked it as well,
One thing that we did discuss talking about before we knew whether either of us liked it was, why is this film not better remembered? And I did look back on Best Picture Oscar winners from the time, and to be fair, it is a bit of a mixed bag of things that really have stood the test of time. Like Lord of the Rings came out at a similar time to this. Gladiator was the year before. So these are Best Picture winners. But then also you have things like Shakespeare in Love. You've got, I think, Driving... No, I don't want to say Driving Miss Daisy. I'm not sure if that did. But Shakespeare in Love, definitely. Then you've got this. You've got Crash came out at a similar time. Million Dollar Baby at the time was well received, but has, in hindsight, not been remembered very... I'm not saying not remembered fondly, but it's just not talked about that much.
Well, when you put it next to Lord of the Rings and Gladiator.
So for this film, I find it quite interesting. This was Russell Crowe at his absolute apex, probably the most famous actor in the world for that 2-year period, or the biggest. Double Oscar Best Actor nomination. Won for Gladiator, didn't win for this one. Why do you reckon this hasn't quite stood the test of time?
I think it's a little bit Oscar baity, a little bit.
Yeah.
Which I tend to recoil at a little bit, and I think probably sometimes accounts for films being very well received critically at a time, and then maybe not being super like talked about in the future, because a lot of films kind of do that sort of thing. The main thing that I think really held the film back, and it's scandalous to say it, but I thought the visuals really just didn't age well at all. It felt like a YouTube music video at times from like the early 2000s, with the numbers coming off at the screens.
It is like a time capsule of early 2000s,
which just aged awfully. I thought anyway. I just didn't think it looked very good.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't forward thinking. Or no, that's not the right way of saying it. But you know how you've got certain Best Picture winners from that time. So I mentioned a couple: Gladiator, Lord of the Rings. They are in a genre where it's easy to do and make it quite timeless. Whereas something like a biopic, which is this essentially is, and you even mentioned it's one of those Oscar bait biopics. I say Oscar bait biopic. Every biopic is Oscar bait, but this is the smart intellectual who's a bit socially neurodiverse, divergent, and we're going to understand a bit about his problems whilst appreciating his genius, it's going to be a chance for some lead actor or actress to really choose some scenery and go for it in a way that is atypical or is supposedly pushing the boat out for them as a performer. And that's one thing I will comment on. Russell Crowe in this, I think, is kind of shit.
Oh, really?
What do you reckon?
I tend not to take strong stances on acting generally. What is it that you didn't...
I just think it was like a classic going like a drama student being like, oh, I'm going to be someone who is socially very awkward, and this is so out of my typecast that I'm going to be a bit melodramatic in it. Now, I don't have that much of an issue with the accent. I thought he did a good attempt at the I think it's a Virginian drawl, or something around that neck of the woods. However, just his approach to being nerdy and a bit neurotic, it just didn't land for me at all. And I was trying to look past the fact that I'm seeing Russell Crowe do it, and he's obviously typecast in a certain way usually. I just still felt like it was an interesting choice to have him as the lead in this.
Yeah, I felt very comme ci comme ça about it, to be honest with you. And like I say, I tend to recoil at it felt kind of Oscar baity to me in a way, that role that he was playing, and I tend to just come away like rolling my eyes a bit. I feel the same way about those performances that get lauded, where it's like a husband and wife screaming at each other in a domestic setting, and like the actors and the actresses, they just like everyone laps it up. And I feel the same way about that as I do about these roles.
Yeah, okay.
You know, like Eddie Redmayne playing them and those sorts of roles where I'm kind of like with you on it a little bit, where I just kind of feel like it just feels like them playing a role because they're excited to play that role. And...
Yeah, exactly that. I think that for someone to lend authenticity to characters like this, where they are very idiosyncratic, it's difficult. It's a very difficult thing to pull off well. Some people who do it really exceptionally are proper chameleonic actors, like your Daniel Day-Lewis. Russell Crowe is exceptional at doing... I'm going to give him some...
Maximus.
I'm going to give him some props. He's exceptional at doing more with less.
Okay.
So he's the sort of person who, stoic protagonist.
Yeah.
who is a lot of facial expressions, a lot of meaning behind the eyes, without necessarily having to be incredibly showy.
Yeah,
he's a great film or TV actor where he's a magnetic stage presence. Now, if he is then overplaying his hand, as is the case here, where he's really trying to demonstrate something more when it comes to his interactions, his dialogue, his engagement with other characters, I think he struggles a bit. It seems like he's out of his depth.
I totally agree, actually. Yeah, if it almost feels a little awkward. It almost feels a little bit like it doesn't quite click for Russell Crowe to be playing these characters.
Yes, just explicit.
It's not an acting issue.
Specifically.
It's a bizarre casting choice.
Oh man, it made me recently. I re-listened to the Tripod Russell Crowe's Lullaby.
All right. Oh, okay, yeah. Tell the audience what that is very quickly.
So there was a radio show in Australia with I think it's special a morning show, and they had this in-house comic group who were musicians called Tripod, and they used to create a song within an hour based on prompts that the audience would give them, and it would usually be to do with some sort of kind of current affair event that happened with a celebrity, and they'd have to write up a quick song. And the best one I ever heard, I listened to both the albums recently, the best one I heard is Crowe's Lullaby, where it's Russell Crowe singing a song to his newborn, and I would thoroughly recommend anyone listening to it. It's amazing. It's
brilliant.
But at that time, you get a sense of what the public perception of Russell Crowe is with that, and also with South Park. And this is him in his absolute pomp. In South Park, he's fighting around the world, a hot-headed actor named Russell Crowe. he loves to act and he likes one thing more, fighting round the world. And it's just him going out. I'm in China with my tugboat tugger. We've heard the Chinese really like to fight. It's just him beating up. All right, we'll go. We don't want to stray too much out of political correctness.
Russell Crowe, though, I think South Park have nailed it.
But yeah,
proper
I do
character
actually
for it,
think
and it doesn't
seems
kind of
like,
make sense with that character.
Yeah, and I do like Russell Crowe. He seems like a good
great.
bloke, but in hindsight, it's interesting that that's how he was perceived.
And then casted for this role.
Yeah, and then obviously casted in a role that was trying to stretch him a bit as an actor, I'd say.
And I don't think that he massively failed, but it did just feel a little bit awkward watching Maximus do that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. For me, that was the big detractor, I'd say. But I do want to talk about some of the real high points. I really liked the schizophrenia plotline.
Loved that.
It was a great,
oh my God.
I actually saw a video of him on Rogan recently talking about the plot device of you basically get halfway through the film. Have we mentioned that we're spoiling this?
Yeah.
Cool. You get halfway through the film and then it goes... You as an audience member realise that you've kind of taken for granted that everything you've seen so far was real.
Yeah.
And you question everything that you've seen.
Incredible. And I researched it. That particular way of delivering that subjective point of view of delusions hadn't been done like that before.
Right.
Like, it was actually breaking ground in that way,
and
which kind of just gives it even more, like, nailed it, Ron.
And we've seen other examples. It seems like it more, I wouldn't say a trope, but it's certainly something that has happened since. You've got your Shutter Islands and other examples. So it's cool that that's like
one of the first to do it, yeah, and it really is incredible. Like, I watched it for the second time in preparation for this, and it's one of those classic situations where it's like a completely different watch on the second watch, and you kind of you're watching it with much more suspicious eyes and noticing odd little bits here and there. I watched it with Faye, who'd never watched it before, and didn't mention anything, obviously, and. When it became clear that we couldn't trust our point of view, she just didn't react, and I was like, "Oh man, that's such a shame." Like, I'll speak to her afterwards. It's like, "This is the first time you watched it?" And yeah. It's like, "What did you think of the reveal?" She's like, "Oh yeah, I saw it on the synopsis before you click play." I was like, "Oh no, why did they put that in the synopsis?"
So
like, yeah, they just spoiled it on the like.
Well, I knew that he had schizophrenic episodes, but I didn't. It was actually a bit of a surprise for me because I didn't know that Paul Bettany's character wasn't real, and I knew that he was going to see things, but I didn't realise how much of what he saw wasn't real. Like, even up to the point of when he gets recruited, I still thought this was all happening. It was only until it got a bit wild where I was like, oh, this must be part of his episodes, and then obviously it culminates in the climax of the whole film is in my opinion, the baby almost getting killed in the bathroom.
Yeah, I'd say so. And it's a very slow progression of, like, you start where none of us know that he is having these delusions. And then it's a very, like, consistent burn as you get closer and closer towards you as the audience and the character becoming more and more aware of. Because even when it becomes clear that you can't trust his point of view, it's not outright like, this is definitely not true. It's like, oh, this might not be true. This might be a delusion. But he's still seeing all this stuff and going, no, this is just the Russians are just deleting information on me.
Yeah, right.
And so there is like even beyond the moment of realization, there's still like a journey for you and the character of like, okay, but are we just being tricked by this espionage situation that we're in, or am I just crazy? It kind of makes you realize you could be roped into it if you had that.
Oh my! You know what? The one thing about these films is that you spend quite a lot of it thinking, how much of what I know is real? I'm glad I don't watch them on hangovers or things like that.
Oh my God.
Be like, oh my!
I got to stop working with the Russians, man.
Yeah, mate. Those Ruskies fought in these Ruskies.
Right, how are we doing for time? We must be right. We've got 6 minutes 51. Any comments?
Just generally, we'll go into some of the key elements that I really liked, but yeah, 7.4, decent film for me. I think without the schizophrenia elements, it was would have been a bit more boring. That was the crux of what I enjoyed in the film.
Yeah, 100%. The love story, really enjoyed.
Yeah.
I generally really don't like romance plots because they pretty much always just go along there's some sort of misunderstanding about something. Well, someone doesn't communicate something properly or whatever. Whereas this really felt like a love story where there was the torment of the real pains of somebody's life and the consequences of loving somebody who's going through that. And that felt like a really good love story to kind of accompany the schizophrenia story, rather than what I find a lot of films do, which is to just kind of crowbar like a very simple off the shelf sort of romantic story in there. And so, and I'm usually very critical of those, and I really enjoyed it in this.
Yeah, they did a good job, and I know you're going to speak a bit on his life, but obviously the relationship between John Nash and I can't remember her name, Mrs. Nash.
Alicia.
It's Alicia.
Alicia.
Something like that. Anyway, he's obviously a massive part of his overall story, so it's good that they really did a good job fleshing that out.
Cool. Okay, so moving on to the rest of the scores. We scored 2 out of the 9, 7.4 and a 7.8. Now we're going to rattle through the remaining 7. We're going to have to come to an agreement on each of those. And the first one, Fred's going to get us started whilst I fill in the spreadsheet, is plot. What did you think the plot was, Fred?
What was the plot? Well, it was a run-of-the-mill genius but socially inept person who is learning to, I don't know, make some sort of breakthrough up until about maybe the end of the first act, would you say? Up until he graduates and gets published. Fine. But in hindsight, that element of the plot was actually really engaging and enjoyable because it feeds into the real meat of the story, which is the schizophrenic episodes. I would say it climaxed with the almost the manslaughter of the baby. And up to that point, from the point of us really questioning what we're seeing, up to that point is really the enjoyment of the film lies there for me.
Yes.
On a second review, as you have done, I imagine I'd enjoy the first bit a bit more as well. It takes quite a long time winding down, I'd say.
Yeah, and the conclusion of it was very Hollywoody, sort of like, he just thought his way out of it. It was just like spend the whole film setting up this really cool, intricate problem, and then Hollywooding a happy ending by going like, he just thought really hard and now he doesn't have schizophrenia, which is, by the way, not how it happened.
Yeah, and
even, not how schizophrenia works.
Even plot devices like the pen ceremony, which is fake. They made that up for the film, is very Hollywood.
It was a bit Hollywoodized.
And you know what? Talking of things that really encapsulate the time, it felt very early 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s, grand, hopeful epic.
Yes.
That was maybe maybe not as unique as it could have been.
Okay, so groundbreaking perspective, very enjoyable twist. A bit Hollywoodized.
I still think it's high score though.
Yeah, I agree.
Also the rewatchability, the whole schizophrenia plotline is very unique and interesting, and they did it. Yeah. They did it really well.
So is it great or is it a sublime?
Is it great or sublime?
Is it 8 is great and 9 is sublime? We've got to come to quite a lot of answers quite quickly.
I'm gonna go 9 is sublime.
You know what, mate? I'm gonna give it that as well. I think we agree on that.
I think it's better than great.
It is. Okay, character. So actually, I thought the characters were pretty good generally.
Yeah.
Obviously, the main character, incredibly interesting story and everything. But I loved the side characters. The one that the imaginary one.
Yeah. Paul Bettany's character.
I thought he was a fun little addition. I liked the love story.
I thought she was great as well, yeah.
Great performance, but also just a decent character. I'm not really sure. Did she just fancy him because he was really smart? He was just a professor?
Maybe a little professor kink, you know?
Yeah, she was a bit out of his league, but she was a good character.
She was. But everyone was kind of out of his league in the end. So sorry, just Charles was the character, Paul Bettany's. And to be honest, his friendship group I quite liked. They were well fleshed out as well, particularly Hanson, his contemporary. I liked Ed Harris's character.
Yes. which is the KGB
the
guy.
imaginary, the imaginary.
No,
CIA,
CIA guy, not KGB.
Dr. Rose and Christopher Plummer is in it. All across the board, really quite a good, well fleshed out set of characters.
Yeah,
a
proper character story. What I thought Sol had like one or two moments where I was just like, this is a bit corny. Like he came up to Alicia late on in the story, and he's like, oh, how are you? And she's like, oh, I'm sorting out his meds for this and that, and he goes, no. How are you, Alicia? And I was like, oh, this is corny as fuck, this. But it's forgivable. It's just of its time, I think.
That's one performance as well, isn't it? But you did get the sense they almost had too many of his friendship group to deal with. Yeah. Like they felt like they had to be a little gang of them, but also a couple of them. Those two, Sol and the blonde guy, were almost... They could have been one character, couldn't they?
I liked the guy that he kind of had a bit of tension with at the beginning, and then kind of became a bit of a friend towards the end of it. I liked him. 8
is great.
Oh, mate. Okay, this is going to score pretty well. Right, we've got 37 seconds to do the remaining 5 scores, so I'm going to stop that timer. But I only set 19 minutes, so dialogue. Ooh.
Anything despicable?
What was
5 a bogey?
5 is a bogey. 6 is mix. 7 is
7 is smooth. Was it pretty? You know what? You know where the dialogue came down a bit. It kind of detracted a bit for me near the end. Those Hollywood moments where he's getting recognised for his achievement and the interaction between him and the person who's giving the Nobel Prize.
Yes.
And all of the laudation at the end for the pen ceremony, as well as just generally sometimes the conversations between him and Charles.
Yes.
Like, they were a bit... It was just a bit Hollywood.
It was just a bit Hollywood, wasn't it? I didn't realise that.
A lot of that's in the dialogue.
Yeah. The other thing that we need to hold it, at least think about in dialogue, is when it talks about all of the actual maths concepts and things like that. You know, where else would we scrutinize it, for example? Do you think that a big Hollywood film should try harder to communicate these ideas in a way that's not like absurdly simplified for Hollywooding it, if that makes sense? So it kind of references the Riemann hypothesis, and then it kind of just says some very simplified stuff that's just not even really.
I think with the Riemann hypothesis, it was more throwaway Easter egg for the maths lovers, because they really didn't go into that at all. I think they could have been clearer on the Nash equilibrium, which, I mean, there was the girl. It was just the girl. Yeah, the theory. We can all get laid. We ignore the fit one.
Shut up,
everyone
John.
Everyone else will say yes to us because they're desperate and needy.
It reminds me of adolescence. Anyway, moving on.
Actually, to be fair, when we talk about the dialogue, that whole sequence is so suspect. I can't believe we didn't immediately think how bizarre that is, that their allegory for explaining this mathematical concept, which, by the way, is not that difficult of a one to get your head around, was for them to
trick women into
thinking they cared about them.
So this is how to optimally manipulate women in the bar. Fucking hell, John. Bogey. Okay.
I reckon.
Which is 5 for those listening. 5 out of 10.
5.
We put qualitative score descriptions of each score. So performance.
Okay, so good ones, I would say.
Alicia.
Yeah, I mean, Jennifer Connelly was pretty great. Dr. Rose and Christopher Plummer did a great job as
Agreed.
Ed Harris, sort of person you'd want in that role. Ed Harris is a good
agreed.
Call. I don't think Russell Crowe was well cast in it.
If you had to give just Russell Crowe an out of 10 score, what would you give it?
Ooh, 4.
Fucking hell.
Bogey.
Okay,
maybe
5.
Yeah, sorry, 5. I think it was below average. I think he was badly cast.
Okay.
I don't think he suited that role.
So what would you say then for the whole film out of 10, acting wise?
I'll be honest, I think Paul Bettany probably gets away with English charm for American audiences, and for me, I find it a tiny bit insufferable sometimes.
Yeah, I do get what you mean.
Like, so that would detract a bit. I liked Josh Lucas, I liked Jennifer Connelly, I liked Ed Harris. I'd probably say 6 is mix.
That was the number I was thinking.
It's a classic mix, this.
I could yeah. Okay, cool. We'll move on. Visuals.
You weren't a fan. You know, another thing we didn't mention is the aging makeup.
Yeah,
which wasn't the best, but maybe I'm being a bit harsh because, again, of the time.
I want to compliment some of the visuals. It's just a comment. It was pointed out to me in retrospect, and I don't know if this kind of is visuals, but Marcy, the girl, she's imaginary.
Yeah.
And she runs through a park full of pigeons, and the pigeons don't react to her presence at all.
Cool.
Which is obviously like a hint that she's imaginary. And I think that they did litter the visuals with thought out things that aren't necessarily there to wow you on the first watch, but to add depth. So there is something to be accounted for there.
Yeah, and I added to that, I quite enjoyed the costume design, set design, the 40s to, I suppose, like later 90s, but specifically that kind of 40s through 60s vibe was cool.
And they changed the color grading throughout, which you would expect, but it was good. It was fine. I did think I don't know if all things from 2000s ages badly. No, it doesn't, because Lord of the Rings looks great.
No.
But I thought that it looked like in certain points like a music video on YouTube from when like YouTube first started. Like the visuals just didn't look right at times.
Yeah, by comparison, for instance, another film that came out at a similar time, which is set in the real world, so it's a bit of a fairer comparison, was American Beauty, and that looks amazing.
Yeah, right, there you go.
I mean, Sam Mendes does an amazing job with just making it quite vibrant and dynamic, even though it's very much encapsulated within the late 90s, early 2000s period.
And it doesn't age in the way that this is aged.
No.
So, visuals, 6?
6 is mix, or would it be a bogey? 5.
Bogey. 5. Okay, sound. Freddie, you've done your research. you leapt at that.
For any eagle-eyed listeners, all 4 of you, you may know that when we get onto sound, we quite often find that we can't remember what we listen to,
and therefore it's a 6 or a 7.
It's like 6 or a 7, depending on it vibes. So this time I've decided to start listening to the scores or the soundtracks in the run-up to get a good feel of my impression of the score. Now, in this case, we've got James Horner, who well known for a lot of the James Cameron films, so your Titanic, your Avatars, a bunch of others. He's a prolific and prolific, successful composer for film. And he died, actually, 2015, so about 10 years ago now.
Same year as John Nash.
Kind of mental. Yes, I know, I did notice that. So fair play to the geezer. And I would say that this is a really good soundtrack. An 80s great soundtrack for me.
Describe the soundtrack very briefly.
So the wistfulness, that it does a really good job of kind of, particularly the early score songs, I guess. There's one called A Kaleidoscope of Mathematics, which is the most recognisable of the tunes if you're listening to it. It's kind of the opening sequence, like...
Yeah.
It's when he's thinking and he's seeing stars and reflections.
A bit like interstellar-y sort of energy.
It's a bit like that. It's quite contemplative.
Okay.
But also it's a good motif for the film that you're watching. As the score progresses and his schizophrenia gets a bit, darker, it does a great job of adding to the atmosphere. And I actually found that it would have made quite a good Bond-style sort of score.
Later on? Or
later on. So it progresses into this. And it's really cool. It was an interesting, probably fairly forgotten score, which I'd recommend listening back to. And for me, was an 8 is great.
Excellent. I'm happy to go with your input on that. I was thinking 6 or 7 because I don't remember it. Anyway, Impact. It won an Oscar. It won Best Picture Oscar.
Here you go.
And it got 6 nominations or something.
Yeah,
in
well,
total.
that's why I think, because it was a big winner. It was not just best picture, multiple Academy Award winner. Obviously, the biggest, Oscar winner of that year, but also one of the big films of the year that will have come out, and yet really not talked about much at all now.
Yeah, not talked about a hell of a lot, but it's not exactly fallen completely flat, has it? It's just
no. And to be fair, when I looked on the IMDb, like just ratings for it compared to the other Best Picture winners, it was like some of the ones I mentioned. So your Crash, your $1 Million Baby. There's the other one I mentioned, maybe Driving Miss Daisy. Whichever ones were around it that were also not that well remembered, it actually had quite a lot more views and likes than those. So it's still, I'm maybe doing it a bit of a disservice here.
I sometimes get YouTube shorts come up of the scene where she tells the construction guys to stop working and they just kind of do.
Oh, really? Was that surely that was a product of his imagination that anyone would stop working?
Excuse me?
Do you mind
Can you
just no, lady,
not work?
You're not a job. This is for the plumbing for the whole block.
Yeah, it was a bit silly, that scene. Anyway, sorry, so Impact.
Impact, smooth.
Surely if it's Best Picture winner, it's got to be at least.
It is great. Oh, okay, great.
Okay, cool. Would you just like ramble whilst I quickly do my figures over?
Well, typically what we used to do is go to the Mate Night machine, but we're trying something new today, and so we're going to just let you all in on how the sausage is made.
Okay, A Beautiful Mind. I've got the score. Well done, Eddie. Thank you for that. What are you doing? You're doing your equations and your Nash equilibriums. And
you better believe it, baby.
And we took an average.
This is about as simple as the Nash equilibrium is, by the way.
Which tune into the podcast later if you want to find out a bit about that. So, A Beautiful Mind. We've run it through the Mate Night machine. We have argued not a hell of a lot.
No,
generally on the same page. And we come to a final score. 8.4 it got on IMDb.
Okay.
The Mate Night score, the correct score,
the right score,
the one that's never wrong, out of 10 to one decimal place, A Beautiful Mind, 7.13.
Ooh.
I thought it was going to be higher than that.
Pretty smooth. Well, there was definitely some things that
held it back
from it.
I think the Hollywoodization and the aging held it back, but the plot of the schizophrenia was very engaging and enjoyable, and also was one of the first to do it, if not the first. So you do get extra props for that, no doubt.
Yeah, no doubt whatsoever. I
think
think
Russell Crowe held it back for Harry.
Russell Crowe
for
dialogue for Fred. Yeah, you know what? It was an enjoyable ride for me. Definitely
would recommend.
A smooth ride.
It was a smooth film. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to hear about a secret segment later that Fred's not told me about, what John Nash's life was actually like, or some random trivia that I found, don't forget to tune in on your favorite podcast platforms. That is Mate Night. We rate and review films.
Nice.
See you later.
See ya. A special Freddy segment coming right in your ears, everyone. So, this week, I didn't write a script for this, so shall I just go for it?
You got this, man. Just make sure you speak into the mic.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, just
can you hear me, everyone? Can you hear me? This week,
we'll cut all that.
No, we won't. Right, so one of the lasting things that came out of A Beautiful Mind is the relationship between Paul Bettany and Jennifer Connelly. Were you aware of this?
I wasn't.
No. So quite an interesting little tidbit for you there. And it got me thinking, Jambo.
What did it get you thinking, Freddie? He didn't script this.
No, I didn't, but there's a title somewhere, and I feel like the title will make sense because it's not the easiest thing to articulate.
Okay.
What are the top 3 celebrity couples where someone is clearly punching?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He got some famous examples for history. By some, I mean, I can think of about 3.
There are shitloads.
Yeah, but-
Every single one of Ariana Grande's partners are like kind of those.
yeah,
What do
he's
they call
been
them?
good,
Handbag boyfriends or something like that?
What's
where
that? Can you explain what a handbag boyfriend
like
is?
they're kind of blatantly just wearing this kind of ugly guy as an accessory to their outfit, and it's like they're just doing it as a bit of a statement.
Well, in the case of the ones that I have procured for you here, we've got 3 classic cases of punching in a relationship where the outside world doesn't really understand what's going on, but there's a common theme throughout. So for people who stick around, including you, Jammer, you can't go anywhere. You have to
Save me.
try and work out what that is. So,
Charisma.
first and foremost, number 3. Now, this is actually incredibly interesting, and all 3 of these stories are quite interesting. But the true romance behind Paul Bettany and Jennifer Connelly getting together. So, Paul Bettany, as a child or as a young man, watches the film Labyrinth. Are you aware of the film Labyrinth?
David Bowie,
David Bowie. Who else is in Labyrinth?
Jennifer Connelly.
Jennifer Connelly. Jennifer Connelly. Yes, a young Jennifer Connelly. I believe she's
okay.
about 17. But to be fair to Paul Bettany, he is also a child as well. And he has a big schoolboy crush on Jennifer Connelly.
Oh, we all remember those when
Yeah,
we were
back in the day.
Watch a film when we were younger. Gemma
Megan Fox.
Arterton.
Gemma Arterton.
Yeah,
Some great picks there. One of the others that we'll get onto as well.
Okay,
A great classic schoolboy
So
crush
he
pick.
sees her in Labyrinth.
Always had a flame in his heart for Jennifer Connelly in Labyrinth. Also, a kind of segue, David Bowie's cockpiece in that is interesting, isn't it?
It's been a while since I watched it.
Just got a big old lump going on in those
Really?
spandex. Yeah, but it's clearly like he's just got like a cup. Or
Yeah,
whatever you
okay.
call it.
Yeah.
But it's just-
Like a really big cup.
Yeah,
a way
it's
bigger
just-
cup than he
it's
needed.
Not necessary. In a
This is like a
film.
children's film, David. Come on, man.
So anyway, years later, Paul Bettany gets cast in A Beautiful Mind. Although not sharing any scenes with Jennifer Connelly's character, I mean, maybe I don't think he is. They have a platonic relationship on the back of that. They meet at a table read. He is in a relationship, as is she.
Oops.
Nothing happens, according to both parties, during the filming of A Beautiful Mind. Now,
Sure.
Here's an interesting turning point in the relationship. I'll give you one guess as to what that may be. That same year, 2001.
9/11?
9/11, correct.
What?
Yes. Give it away with the actual year. So they filmed this in, I think, like...
I didn't want to be wrong about that.
yeah. Would have been funny if you'd just gone, 9/11?
Lord of the Rings.
They filmed this in about 2000, I think, and then a year later, 9/11 happens, and for some reason, Paul Bettany is only worried about Jennifer Connelly, a woman he was in this film with.
Bit weird, that.
So he just says, I must be in love with her, calls her, proposes over the phone.
You're kidding.
And she says, yeah, okay. And then he moves to New York. He was filming something at the time. He calls her from another country. Just goes, I just called her and said, I need to be with you. I'm in love with you. Let's get married.
That is
And she was like,
ridiculous.
okay. Yeah.
What
So
the hell?
he locked it down.
That's crazy.
Married his
that.
childhood his childhood crush.
So do you reckon
Without
that
having ever dated.
there must have been some tension between them when they were filming?
You'd have thought so. There's
surely.
another on this list where I'd also suspect there might have been something happening, although claims are made that nothing
It
was.
reminds me of the Michael Caine story where he saw
okay.
some. Have you heard about how he met his wife?
Yes. Well, I refresh me because I
He saw, I think it was like a Brazilian weather reporter, and like fell in love with her. So he just flew to Brazil.
Yeah, it's something like
And
that,
when
isn't it?
found her and was just like, I really like you, I want to be with you.
It's like
And
an advert or something, wasn't it? It's like, I saw Michael. My name is Michael Caine. Right, man.
and I think it must have worked, because I think that
Then that's-
otherwise it wouldn't
that's
have been
together
much of a
as well.
story 80 years later if he's still telling
and
it.
again, a famous example of a couple.
So
Still
the lesson
best
here,
time.
lads, the pattern, shoot your shot, I guess.
Yeah, just kind of shock them with how ballsy you are.
Or wait for like the next 9/11 and then use that as a
It
weird...
might be one coming up.
What?
It seems like we're in kind of like a 9/11 sort of time.
Okay, well, I'm all ears. Are we on to the next one, or is there anything else to add?
Number 2. Nah, I think that's about it, but yeah, very interesting.
That is a very good one, that.
So number 2, and this was probably the bookie's favourite going into this, is Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Okay, so who are these people? I should know. I know.
Catherine Zeta-Jones, famous heartthrob from the 90s and early 2000s. She was spotted by Michael in the film Zorro. Yeah, put Mask of Zorro. Put Zorro in. That's
Right, okay.
That's like prime time Catherine Zeta-Jones. Michael Douglas, also an incredibly famous actor. Watched a film of his recently, The Game.
Okay.
Nice, interesting David Fincher film.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know Michael Douglas.
Michael
Yeah,
Douglas.
yeah. Damn, he was
a
punching,
game. They're
wasn't he?
playing a game with me. Yeah.
Although,
I'm
is this
Michael
young
Douglas.
him? I found a young
That's
picture.
very young him. But when they started...
Not that young.
That's incredibly young. That's a boy. When they first started seeing each other, he was 25 years old. He still is 25 years older than her. But I think he'd have been about 50.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So 25 years older than Catherine Zeta.
How successful was he in his career at this point?
Oh, he's a big time movie star in the kind of 80s, and then by the 90s, his father is Kirk Douglas, who is an incredibly famous, successful actor as well. So he's always been brought up in and around the Hollywood scene. So he tells his agent, I want to meet her, set it up. They meet at Deauville Film Festival, where he meets her at a bar, says, hey, do you want to have a nightcap at mine? And she comes and meets him later, and he says, I'm going to be the father of your children.
What?
First time seeing
That's what he says.
And she goes, all right, I'll see you later. No,
She leaves. Yes, go on, girl.
But not to be deterred, Michael Douglas creeps his way back into her life by finding out what film she's on next, which is a film called Entrapment.
Oh,
being filmed in Scotland.
Fitting name, isn't it?
Very
Fucking
nice
hell.
name. Being filmed in Scotland, he sends over a bouquet of roses for when she arrives.
Yeah.
And I think that note was the one which, got her enamoured. And she has since
Flowers.
said, flowers, and then some note which must have been like, I'll kill your family.
Yeah, you're trapped.
Entrapment. I set this whole out. I set this whole
Trapped you in a
film up.
stadium.
I just locked the door behind you. So that's that happened.
Okay, so we got a bouquet of flowers with a note.
And she then said, and the worst part about the whole thing is when he said he'd be the father of my children, he was right. They
Yeah,
actually went on
okay.
to have some kids as well.
So do you reckon he's just really stubborn then? Do you reckon he's just like, fuck, I've said it, I've got to...
Again, it seems to be just a case of going out there, ballsy moving it, and
Yeah.
that's gonna
Well,
go forward.
bit of confirmation bias. Probably only hearing the stories where that works. How many times did these...
Everyone should try this. Mate night guarantee.
It makes you wonder how
If you
many...
like her, tell her you'll be the father of her children.
And if it goes wrong, just
And
send her
then
some
steal
flowers.
Her children.
It's just so... Like, how many times do you reckon Michael Douglas tried that with somebody else and it didn't work? And this is just a story that lasted.
Every time he watched a film with a hot babe in it, Michael Douglas just said, put me in touch with her. But she mentioned that as well. So not only did he say, I'm going to be the father of your children, she said, like, I've heard about you. I've heard what you're like. I think I'm going to leave.
You keep telling people that you're going to have children with them.
I'm going to impregnate you and you and
Well, there you go.
So-
if she's out of your league, which is the theme here,
I think you got to just go
don't
stand out from the crowd.
say no before to yourself before, like
Don't take no for an answer.
that's not what I said.
Michael.
No, just go and
Michael.
just go and try.
Yeah, so you've got that example, but now we're going to flip the script a bit for number one, which I think that would have been a lot of people's favourite. But we have one which, for people familiar with this, will say, that's
Okay, well, I have a quick honourable mention before number one. Not super honourable mention, but an interesting one. Wicked, recently. You remember Bok? Bok?
back.
Remember him?
Yeah.
The Munchkin guy? Married when he started that filming and is now dating Ariana Grande. He left his wife and kids to be with Ariana Grande. I told you, she goes for these like handbag boyfriends or whatever. I'm sure I'm getting the name wrong. Yeah, and he left his wife and kids for her.
Oh, man, that's so rough.
It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I said the weird thing with the Ariana Grande, I mean, she looks so ill now.
Yeah.
She looks so thin. Well, I don't want to comment on it too much, but what I will say is that Pete Davidson, I don't know if men may think he's a handbag boyfriend. However, his list of...
Yeah, it was with Kim Kardashian.
But it's not just Kim Kardashian, it's like almost every person he's dated has been like an incredibly well-known female heartthrob. So people obviously see something in it.
Yeah. Women see something in it.
People, when I say people, I mean women.
It baffles us. Anyway, so that was my honourable mention.
Number one.
Okay, I'm going to get Google up.
So you know these people. Because to be honest, neither of us are that well versed
Yet.
on this area of pop culture, just relationships. It's been good to learn about. If you have any that you're interested in, please feel free to email it. Aaron Taylor Johnson
Oh, yeah?
and Sam Taylor Johnson.
What?
Aaron Sam Taylor Johnson. Yeah, she's a woman. It stands for Samantha. It's not this.
And is it like no relation, just pure coincidence? Or?
No, they've taken each other's. I think
Oh,
he
right,
was
okay.
originally Aaron
Taylor.
I'm not actually sure if he was Taylor or Johnson.
Yeah, okay.
When they met, 2008, when Aaron auditions for Sam's directorial debut,
Yep.
Nowhere Boy.
Yep.
Aaron 18. 14 would have been bad. Sam 42.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, hey, I'm not shallow, but if I was, I'd probably say that she's not really that good looking.
Yeah, and he's pretty
He's
stunning.
just stunning.
Was he not going to be James Bond at one point?
He potentially still could be James Bond.
Yeah.
Rachel will love it if I mention Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging.
Okay.
Which was kind of like girls' versions of Gemma Arterton and Megan Fox.
Yeah.
Like, that's a big time. Oh, Aaron Taylor Johnson. Yeah.
Bit of a hunk.
Bring me into my womanhood. So, yeah, they meet, 2008, audition, September 2008. Unsure on the exact dates of them meeting, but September is when she separates with her husband of 11 years. Fuck. 2 kids.
Oh, my God.
So, they've met, I don't know whenabouts they met exactly, but they supposedly didn't get together during filming, although one of the quotes from Sam during Nowhere Boy is that everybody on set knew, whatever that means.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious what that means.
They had this connection. If you look into...
They were sleeping with each other.
No, so here's the thing. 1 year to the minute after they first met, he proposed. So his big proposal was 2009.
All right.
Year to the minute after,
Yeah.
Like, to the minute. He worked out the minute they saw each other first.
Okay.
Proposed. And they had never been on a date or kissed.
Right, okay.
So...
Is it just... So the theme
The thing
is
is
just...
men being ballsy, but in this case, I mean...
You don't need to know them?
people clearly like random acts of, putting
Seduction.
themselves out there. I mean, seduction in this one, yeah. More like entrapment. Commitment.
It's like, surprise them. Catch them off guard.
Just catch people off guard.
Although they might tell you to leave them alone, like in the second case.
That case, but then just try again.
They just catch them off guard
Try
again.
again.
Just keep surprising them.
What's better than being caught? Better than being caught off guard once. Being caught off guard every time you open your eyes. So yeah, I mean the line between happy relationships and stalking is clearly. You can see why people try it.
Yeah, well, and it seems to
Stories
work.
Like this. They hear stories like this and think, oh, okay.
Especially speaking into Mike.
Because it's fallen down almost
sorry.
entirely. So, sorry, audience. If
Yeah, just hold it.
sorry if you're still there. So, yeah, in a rare case of the woman punching.
Yeah.
I mean, that's wild. And do you want to have a guess at what the commonality is between all of these?
Well, I thought it was going to be just go for a wild Hail Mary.
I mean,
and...
there's multiple commonalities. There's one I was thinking of specifically, and it's
Okay, yeah, let's hear it then.
It is that they're all still together, which is incredibly rare in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And we're talking, I mean, 2009 for these guys is the shortest. And that's like 15 years. They've been married,
wow.
they've had 2 kids together. 15 years is a great innings in Hollywood.
Massive.
Really,
yeah.
like, usually they're knocking out marriages like it's nobody's business. The other two, I mean, Catherine Zeta-Jones and Michael Douglas got together. I think they married 2003, but they were together that year, 99. And they're going strong.
And he'd been watching her since 95.
He's been watching her since she opened her window. Yeah, so there you go. Interesting segment on people punching in relationships. And I guess the message is...
Shoot your shot.
Shoot your shot. Love is confusing.
Yeah.
Love doesn't make sense to the wider world.
She might not be as out of your league as she probably is.
Probably is.
Unless if you're famous, then it's fine.
If you're famous, it's fine to do things that are usually unacceptable in society.
Although I think we've found that's not the case.
It's becoming less of the case now.
If you're a celebrity,
Historically, it was fine.
maybe we should cut this.
No,
Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in.
yeah,
we will see you on the next one.
Special secret for these things.
Thank you, Fred. Any comments, Freddie?
The Nash equilibrium is something that we looked at in one of my economics modules at university, and the prevailing comment that I remember from my professor saying is that it's not that interesting or difficult to understand. And to be honest, it is basically just your standard, like prisoner's dilemma is an example where there's a Nash equilibrium. And it's a case of you, in a perfect game, let's say, where you know all of the possible outcomes, there is going to be, as you mentioned, this balancing point where both parties would always go for an optimal solution, presuming the other party goes for what is going to be best for them. The only points of interest that I'll add for finite games, there is supposedly there's always a Nash equilibrium. One thing I do remember from our economics module on this was that there is always a Nash equilibrium, but some of them aren't known. So you may have games that are finite, but it's like not known how to complete this game.
So a finite game could be like a game of tennis?
I don't know. I did ask about kind of finite games in more of a capacity, but really, I think the thing with Nash equilibriums to understand is like the games are so theoretical that when it says that it can be easily applied to real world, it still presumes that people or organizations are only going to act in a way that is specifically best for them rather than look at cooperation. And that's one of the very interesting points about Nash equilibriums is that the equilibriums will quite often not have the best outcome for both parties.
Right, okay.
So, for example, in the prisoner's dilemma, let's say you've got the 2 prisoners. For anyone who's unfamiliar with it, I actually do have an example which I can just rattle off here. So, let's 2 suspects, Alice and Bob, arrested for a crime. The police don't have enough evidence to convict them on the main charge, but they can convict them on a lesser charge. Each suspect is given the choice to either confess or remain silent. So your standard dilemma where there's 2 parties and they've got 2 options. So the matrix for this, which is
separated.
Yeah, they're separated, so they are spoken to individually and they know what the outcomes would be if the other person does the other actions.
Yes.
So
if they both confess.
Alice knows what would happen if Bob confesses, and Alice knows what would happen if Bob remains silent, versus what would happen if she confesses and if she doesn't.
Yeah.
However, they don't know what the other person has done.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the game setting. And for each of the payoffs, it works as such. If they both confess, they both get 5 years in prison. If Alice confesses and Bob remains silent, Alice goes free and Bob gets 10 years. If Bob confesses and Alice remains silent, it's the reverse. So he goes free, Alice gets 10 years. If they both remain silent, they each get 1 year for the lesser charge, which is all the police can convict them on without some sort of confession.
Yeah, okay.
So it would be the Nash equilibrium for this is for them both to confess and take the 5-year hit, because confession is actually a dominant response for each party. Because if they confess and the other person's if they confess and the other person confesses, it works out as 5 years. Versus if they don't, it works out as they go off scot-free.
Yeah.
Whereas if they don't confess, although if the other person doesn't confess, it's fine. If they do, it would be 10 years for them. In the table, the two options for confession make the most sense. So they're the two that you should go for. However, if it was shown as a whole, it actually makes more sense for them both not to confess.
Yeah.
So that's where the almost contradiction of the Nash's equilibrium versus the optimal outcome comes from.
Okay. Yeah. So, but that always assumes tons and tons of stuff in perfect.
It very much
settings.
simplifies it. All Nash equilibriums that you'll do up to that level in practice, up to the theoretical level, will be incredibly simple.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Anything else to add?
There are apparently real-world examples of it, but the examples they gave, again, I think do take for granted that people think that in that binary manner.
And in the film, it's explained by saying if we all go for the 10 out of 10, then
We'll all fail.
Then we're all going to fail, and
She'll be freaked out.
All her friends will be upset.
Yeah.
Whereas if none of us go for the 10 out of 10, we all go for their friends.
All of their friends will accept.
All of their friends, and this is where
'Cause they will take the
assume
scraps.
perfect conditions for the Nash equilibrium. But it kind of helps illustrate, I guess, that there's like an element of cooperation involved in.
Yeah,
getting
but the
best
funny
outcome.
thing, the funny thing about Nash equilibriums generally is it basically flies in the face of cooperation. So that's part of the reason why they
Okay.
say it's good for politics and international affairs. But it also makes people kind of see why different governments don't trust each other, because we all think about doing everything that's going to be only for the best for us individually.
Yeah, okay.
Even though it is kind of like clear examples of why working together would make sense.
Right,
and yet
okay.
that's not wise, because if you decided to take the approach of working together, the other person will take advantage of you.
And is that what the Nash equilibrium says, or is that just an outcome of it?
It basically presumes that it says that you should always do what is going to... You should always take the course of action which assumes that the other person does what's best for themselves.
Self-interest, yeah, okay. Assume self-interest in the other person.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And that will help you figure out what they're going to do and then act based on that assumption.
Yeah. And because it becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy in that, no one is ever going to want to cooperate, because if you take that approach, like
There's a vulnerability.
there's a chance that you do win because the other person does cooperate. And it's like, well, it's good in the prisoner's dilemma by confessing. Well, yeah, I mean, that's where it doesn't really work, actually. I don't know.
There's
You
that
go
TV
into it.
show with the golden balls, isn't there, where they steal or split, don't they? And
Yeah, so that's
presumably it's a similar thing where if you both click split, then you get half and half. And if one of you, and you convince them, you're like, I'm gonna split. I promise I'm gonna split.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, yeah, me too. But if you both click steal, then neither of you win anything. So
Yeah.
the Nash equilibrium,
Nash equilibrium
says,
is-
assume that they will click steal. right?
Yeah. So the thing with the
Or
thing where
select.
the where it's a bit difficult in that one is if you is you don't get anything for both stealing. So you have
Yeah.
nothing. So that does affect it somewhat.
Oh yeah.
Whereas in most examples of two-player games where there is a payout, you'll usually get something even if you both act to complete yourself in your
Yeah.
self-interest.
Okay.
However, with with Split or Steal with Golden Balls, that show ended quite abruptly after someone completely outthought the system by say. Have you seen the example
No.
where
No.
two people were talking and they say Split or Steal? What are you guys going to do? And one person says to the other, I am going to steal. I'm stealing the money and I'm going to split it with you after the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he
Okay.
goes, why would you do that? Why don't we just split? And he said, I'm telling you, I'm going to steal. The money is being stolen. It's the only way I can trust that you will do it. Either you steal as well, and I will guarantee we are both walking away with nothing, or you can trust that I will split with you after the show. You have only these two options.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you may as well split, but if you don't, we're
Yeah.
both going with nothing. And so the other guy splits, and he, in that case, splits as well, just to convince. He was just trying to convince him to split.
Okay. But
However,
then-
it just made a mockery of the whole
Yeah,
show
yeah.
because they couldn't come back from that. If everyone would do that every week.
And that, I think, when they slag off John Nash's equilibrium, saying, "Oh, it's not that complicated," and whatever. Pretty much all game theory principles are pretty simple. And actually coming up with something new and simple is kind of better in some ways, than coming up with something absurdly esoteric and new.
Yeah, and if anything, it does make you actually start to question certain procedures you may be going through and really rationally thinking about them to the point where you may find certain loopholes and it may benefit you. It's hard to say that there is going to be a perfect Nash equilibrium for almost every process you have in your life. However, if you start to think about things a bit more rationally, there's a good chance you will have better outcomes for yourself.
Game theory, baby.
Yeah,
That's what you come
basically.
to Mate Night for.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Game night.
What's the movie? Moving on.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an abrupt turn.
Sorry about that.
That was like a whole segment we just did. It should
we
be
just
on our
stop there?
podcast. Was the movie accurate about his illness?
I heard it was semi-accurate. Yeah.
No,
No,
not
at all.
really. In the film, Nash sees imaginary people like his college roommate or a government agent. In real life, he didn't have visual hallucinations. He heard voices and believed he was part of a global conspiracy. His mind created a world of meaning that wasn't real, but it was completely convincing to him. That sounds like, yes, it was pretty accurate, apart from the visual hallucinations.
It seems like this is the easiest way of us showing how he felt.
Yeah.
Even though if you asked him, he'd be like, I didn't see anyone.
That's a good way of understanding that. I like that.
Yeah, because really mental illness is a bit hard for... I guess it's very difficult for people to portray, right?
Well, but this is kind of one of the things where I was super confused about whether he was having hallucinations or not, was when they had the car chase with the guns. And I was like, there's no fucking way he's hallucinated this. It
Yeah.
must be real.
What do you
And then
reckon
they
of
were
it?
just like, oh, yeah, no, he hallucinated it.
But the funny thing about that is it really does abruptly end, doesn't it? Like the car chase is happening and then suddenly he just comes back to his...
He just walks back into his house and he's like, I've had a hard evening doing maths and Nash stuff.
I've nashed all over the place.
Equilibrium
I just nashed all
everywhere.
over myself.
How did he recover from his schizophrenia? Slowly over the real one, over the years. There was no big turning point, no miracle. He stopped taking medication in the 1970s and gradually learned to recognize which thoughts were real and which were delusions. He called it thinking rationally again.
Nice.
Great at naming
Well
things,
done.
this guy. That is groundbreaking.
Was
Did he
John
really do
Nash
that?
stupid?
That's what makes his story remarkable. Okay, not the Hollywood gloss, but the long, lonely battle back to clarity. Freddie.
Thinking rationally again.
So
Wow.
he thought really hard about
But
the
this
name.
guy's fun at parties.
That's fucking creative. What are you going to call your equilibrium, Nash? Final line. The film gave us a clean version, but the truth, no fake friends, no dramatic speeches, just a mind fighting to come back and winning quietly. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. This has been May Night.
Ooh, May Night radio right there.
Right, you know?
Get done with this shit. 2 hours or whatever it's been.
Schizophrenia, yeah. So I did look into it.
Schizophrenia. Thoughts.
Movie reviews and schizophrenia. So, yes, you can have sustained hallucinations of people, but it is insanely rare. Like it barely ever happened.
Yeah.
And it would not be nearly as abundant in his life. Like they were kind of, he was living with them. So like they might see a person and then maybe like later on see that person again, but it would never be one that you could interact with, and it would never be one that you could like, like live in a house with and throw a desk out the window with. And right. So it really did push the schizophrenia.
Push the envelope out there.
Yeah. But you know what? It was a Hollywood film, and it was quite fun to watch.
It was fun. It does make you think that also a time where, you know, dramatic license was taken in a lot of storytelling, wasn't it? I feel like now, would you say people try and be a bit more realistic? Would you say we were in an era of more realistic storytelling?
I think rightly so. We are doing our best to always be as authentic as possible. People really scrutinize people for being inauthentic, especially in like movies and storytelling.
You get people whose whole careers are kind of defined by like the history buffs or something like that, where they nitpick and go through and say how realistic and things like that. Yeah.
And then you get movie podcasts that go through the Nash equilibrium.
We don't know what we're talking about.
Try and figure it
Try
out.
and work out what it is. Have you ever watched the video of that person having a schizophrenic episode on YouTube?
Which one? There's just one.
The one I'm thinking of.
What the fuck? No.
Where it's like he films. I presume it's one of the more famous ones. It definitely had a lot of views.
Right. Okay.
Very interesting.
That's
so
cool.
He's like, oh, I've suffered from schizophrenia. I thought we would kind of show you what the experience is like for someone when they have an episode. And so he's with his girlfriend, and she films it, and it's really, really interesting to see his reaction. So when he starts to see like people at the windows or like in the desks, and they're like, she starts going like, are people here? And he's like, yeah.
And so does he recognize that these are hallucinations?
He does, but I think like, I'm not sure if he was taking medication and he kind of eased off it for the episode, but he recognized it. But it's clear it's like, it doesn't, he has to really convince himself. So he's
he's staring, he's hard.
He's basically like, well, he's basically seeing things there that are there that it seems like they are there, and he has to come to terms with the fact that they're not. So he does recognize that even during the episode, you get the sense that he recognizes that the things aren't there, but he's almost like saying it to camera, like, yeah, I can see them there. Yeah, but it does, for him, it's very real. It's cool. It's worth watching. It's worth watching for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, is that everything we have for the episode? Oh, I had some trivia very quickly.
Oh, trivia as well.
I'll rattle through it because we've been here a while. They both died in a taxi crash.
Yeah, I was going to say. I told you that's crazy, right?
So John Nash and Alicia Nash, 85, something like that. They were in the passenger seats of a taxi, and both taxi drivers that had the collision came out basically unharmed, but John and Alicia literally projectiled out of the car.
Yeah, they didn't have their seatbelts on.
Which is not good when you're 80.
Not smart. Yeah. But the other interesting aspect of it was on the way back from the award that he won for the Abel Prize, which is a Norwegian award for like... I'm not sure if it was
Secret
in mathematics.
Service contributions.
For dyslexics trying to get a Nobel Prize. So I think that it is a prestigious award that he won. So he won the Nobel, which is a bit more prestigious, but then the Abel's kind of secondary. It's quite an important award. It was on the way back from that. So you can watch his speech for the Abel Prize on YouTube.
And then he dies.
He died in the taxi back. Though I think the Abel Prize is awarded, it potentially is awarded in Norway, or it's a Norwegian prize. So he may have, been, it would have been a few days after potentially, but it's on the way back.
Right, okay. There you have it.
Crazy, right?
That is, yeah, Jesus.
Because that would have been a real cool addition to the film. If it happened. They could redo the film now.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not being funny. They could have even made it look like the Russians did it, just to
Oh
really
my
fuck
word.
the audience.
Yeah, they could.
Oh, by the way, this was all real.
The Russians
we just
do-
managed to convince this
The
guy
Russians do so much crazy shit
in this film.
in this film.
The Riemann hypothesis mentioned throughout the movie is a real and famous problem in mathematics that's gone unsolved for nearly 150 years. It hasn't been proved yet.
One of the millennium problems.
Can you hang fire? That's later on in this.
Sorry.
Many other important theories have been proved on the condition that the Riemann hypothesis holds, hence its importance. In the year 2000, the Clay Mathematics Institute of Cambridge, Massachusetts, listed the Riemann hypothesis as one of the 7 Millennium Prize problems and offered a $1 million reward to the person that proves it.
To be fair, though, if I was an institution that shared a name with a much more famous institution for education, so the Cambridge, I would probably make up fucking awards as well.
No one's ever solving this.
It's like if you got a famous dad or something. Yeah. What if I give you $1 million quid for
And he
something?
named you after him as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, why would you start like a maths institute
It's
in
interesting, though.
Cambridge,
I think
Massachusetts?
for things like
Yeah, I went to Cambridge. Yeah, fucking right.
yeah, I think for things like, maths, it's cool to have some big $1 million prizes for things.
Yeah.
Do you know about the only one of the unsolved equations to have won it?
Remind me.
So, oh god, I'm gonna have to remember the guy's name, but he solved it's like Ricci sequences. Anyway, he solved this particular one of the
Millennium problems.
problems, and he refused the prize.
Did he
Like an absolute baller. So yeah, it was only like a year or two after he managed to solve it. It's the only one that's been solved.
No.
And up as far as I know, I've not kept up with it, but I believe it would probably be a bit of a bigger deal. It probably would have reached us if one of them had been solved. It's quite a big deal.
Yeah, well, they picked them because a lot of maths is built on the assumption that they are correct, and so they kind of need them to be proved. Otherwise, things get a little bit awkward.
The Poincare conjecture. So he solved it with something called Ricci flow. But yeah, he basically was this like unknown Russian as well, unknown guy who was just like putting in papers online, and then he was like, "Oh, I've solved the Poincare conjecture, I think," and everyone's like, "What?"
That's cool as fuck.
They're like, "Well, here's your $1 million," and he was like, "Nah, it's all good." And he doesn't really do interviews or anything. He's like this real enigmatic figure in maths.
That's cool.
Not really not really known before. Just comes in, does that.
Blimey. The scene towards the end of the film, where John Nash contemplates drinking tea, is based on a true event. When Russell Crowe met the real John Nash, he spent 15 minutes contemplating whether to drink tea or coffee.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's a long time. Could have had both.
Weird guy
in that time. I mean, that's a little insensitive, but yeah,
weirdo.
John Nash is the co-inventor, independently from the Danish mathematician Piet Hein, of the strategy game Hex. This was caused by his frustration after he was defeated at Go, and he wanted to create a perfect game. The scenes where he does that were shot, but then deleted from the final cut and can be found in DVD extras or online.
Oh, that's cool. So they made it independently as well.
What's that, sorry?
So he said it was a co-creator or whatever with another guy who made the game completely independently of him.
I don't know. I kind of thought they both might have had like slightly different contributions and didn't really talk.
Yeah, maybe. It sometimes does happen that, so in maths again, if big solutions are found, that two people will do it independently of each other. Yeah, that's interesting that they did it for making a game.
Yeah. It's petty, that, man. Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for tuning in. There was a lot of content here, so I appreciate it. If you're still listening, thank you very much.
For a film no one cares about.
Yeah.
But
if you made it through the whole conversation we had about the Nash equilibrium, tune into Old Boy instead. It's more light-hearted. Anyway, thank you so much. We'll probably release something else pretty soon. Just check us out. Sinners.
I think we'll do
maybe
Sinners.
next week.
I think we'll do Sinners next week.
Thank you so much. We'll see you on the next one.
See you later. All right.